I think we're like, yes, we are. When they say no. My friends, we have been the last few weeks going through this book. And today I am super stoked because we got Andrea and Richard with us to answer questions on this book. Y'all, this is going to be such a good show. Okay, my friends, here we go. Andrea and Richard, thank you so much for being here. As I was just saying off air, that's why we're running a little late, everybody, because you know me, I just kept rambling about how awesome I love this book. So how are you guys today?
We're good. I have to tell you, Dan, I love your beginnings. The intros to your shows are always so cool. I don't know, it's a little intimidating. There's a lot there's high expectations here.
No, you know what? You do awesome every time you're on, Andrea. It's you know what? I've always found that so we started off originally with the show where it was just like kind of get talking for a minute or two to bring people in. And then nobody would come in. And we're kind of like, okay, well, where's the hook? So now I'm trying to start it with hooks, but I tend to not think about them. And I use what we talk about before we go live as the hook. So works well. So I was just saying, actually, let's redo this. Let's do this a different way. Can you guys share with us? So you had Go for No, you created the Go for No movie. What brought about this book? What was kind of some of the influencing factors where you started to look at this book and create the outline that you did and write it in the way you wrote it?
Okay, so I'm going to start. Richard can add in. It started with me bitching and complaining that we needed a follow-up to Go for No, which I had been doing for years. And what we had found, Dan, is, we so believe in the Go for No message, which, just for context, is, hey, you have to be willing to hear no. If you want more yeses in your business, you got to hear more no's. And so we are out there teaching people, go for no, hear more no's. And then it's like, what I found was oftentimes I would be compelled to talk about, okay, what do you do when they do say no? Like, what are you supposed to say? How do you handle that emotionally? How do you handle that tactically, strategically? Are there things that you shouldn't do? Are there things that you should do? And so we've been kind of bantering this around with me poking him because he's really the creative genius of the two of us and the writer, the extraordinary writer of the two of us. And so I'm on him. And finally, I don't know why, but last year it was like, okay, let's write it. And he came up with the title When They Say No, which is really, that is the hook. It's what to think, say, and do when you are finally getting all those no's.
Yeah, and besides her poking me, which is kind of poking fun at us, but pretty true. We had an experience over the last 20 years where we first wrote Go for No, and then we started speaking about Go for No. And at almost every event that we would speak at, there were two very distinct groups of people who would come up and talk to us afterward. The first group were the people who went, oh, I get it. It's a numbers game. Just go out and hear no. And they would go out and they would increase the number of no's they would hear, and they'd increase their success. Then there was the second group of people, completely different group of people. They would say, oh yeah, I get it. It's a numbers game, but I can't. I'm afraid. I don't even want to hear the word no, because when they say no, I won't know what to say next. And we delayed writing this book 10 years longer than we should have, because we knew that audience was out there. We knew there was a second group of people who wanted more. And, we just, like everything else, just say, hey, 2 months, 6 months, next year. And finally we said, no, the time is now.
Wow. So I must be from a third group.
Well, you're in the first group because you heard Go for No and you were like, I get it. I can do this. This is not a problem.
Yeah. Well, I kind of looked at it a little differently though, Andrea. I got it and I was like, oh yeah, totally the right mindset. And it's something, it reminds me about something Ryan said to me once, where we were talking. I said, well, I have to go do this. He means he said, you mean you get to go do this? Like you get to make sales calls every day. And when I first read Go for No, so for everyone, we are going to do this. And where's my go for no? My go for no might actually, nope. All right. So everyone, we're going to do this. All right. These two plus this are what my challenge is for you to today to go out and buy. Because this trilogy right here, I honestly think if you're talking about sales career and your sales career, this trilogy is probably the three best things that will help you understand. And let me explain to you why. Andrew, Richard, when you guys first introduced me into this Go for No, when I got the concept, I read the book, I loved it. And I said, I need to qualify better. And more importantly, I need to disqualify better. Because if I could disqualify better, I in turn hear more no's, but it's a no that does not impact me in an emotional manner. Does that make sense? Because I took it and I asked the same thing. Okay, I hate hearing no. I'm so passionate about my products and service and what I can do for people. When they say no, I almost think back going, what did I do wrong? Like they shouldn't say no. Okay, how do I explain it better? And I remember, I don't know how many times I've been on sales calls. I hang up. No. And I dial it back and I go, hey, I must not have said something right because you're not going with me, right? And that was kind of my approach. So when I looked at it, I said, okay, so, and this is before when they say no, everyone. Yeah. So I was like, well, how do I get rid of that? Because I took it so personally, like unbelievably personally, where I would be destroyed at the end of some days because I didn't get one yes. And I would go like, what am I doing? I'm not explaining it properly. I need to better. How do I communicate better? And then you start going down all these rabbit holes and I'm chasing 12 rabbits and I'm catching none. Does that make sense?
Yep.
That whole, when I started diving into this, and then I'm looking at the chapters, like, ask yourself, is this really a no? When I'm looking into chapters, like it could be worse. Take responsibility. You're just getting started. I love this part where you talk about the advisor sales and everything in there. So I found this book met the mindset that I originally had with this book. So you guys did a fantastic job connecting these two, I have to tell you. And I'll say maybe that's what took so long, because everything happens for a reason. And maybe there wouldn't have been a connection if you didn't do it earlier. Now that my whole philosophy strategy is out of the way.
Well, yeah, I just
color shirt is my name tag. See that?
Yeah. Well, you know, we do a little bit of publishing and writing for other people every now and then. And I was working on a book for one of our clients, and I realized I could not have written any portion of his book or helped him with his book 15 or 20 years ago, because I just did not have the knowledge base to do it. And as much as, you know, as I'd like to say that we knew everything that was in this book when we started, we didn't. You know, we're just like the learners. We're learning as we go. And it was a matter actually of writing Go for No and marketing Go for No that we got to Go for No.
Yes.
Often enough that we learned these other lessons.
Wow, that's amazing. So let's talk about that a little more. So when you started this book, or when the idea initially, like, did you start with the title and then go from there? Or how did you guys, because I know you said it was kind of a 10-year, should have been out 10 years ago, quote unquote. What was kind of the process and what made you start writing it the way that you wrote it?
Yeah, what was your methodology?
Yeah, my methodology was every now and then somebody would say something to me. They would usually be in the form of a question. It's like, so when somebody says, when somebody says we don't need it right away, or somebody says, well, I'll talk to you about it, but my wife doesn't want to get on the phone with me, or whatever it is, whatever the thing is, and they would say, what do you recommend? Well, we hadn't given it much thought. We didn't dive that deep into the topic ourselves for me to be able to do these things. And what they were really asking, I mean, let's face it, Dan, what this book really is we get it. Could you please help me get them to say yes? You know, it's like almost go for yes, but it's a bridge.
Don't change it this far in, Richard.
is that when the person says no, you don't go, okay, thanks, bye, or, see you later and walk away. You explore it a little bit more. You ask yourself, why did they say no? How did they say no? What's the essence of this no? Is there something here that I can work with to continue the conversation? Sometimes there isn't. Sometimes disqualification, flat out disqualification, is the best answer. For years we used to get on the phone and we would call potential speaking clients, and we would do the standard go for yes intro.
That's right.
Right? Hey, how you doing? It's a beautiful day, isn't it? How are things going in Dallas? So anyway, you want to make more money, don't you? And we start asking all of these yes questions. Like there is some magic. Like, if you can just get someone on the yes train, if you can just get them saying yes, 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 yes. Then when you ask the big question, are you willing to pay me big money to come speak? They will automatically just say yes because they've been preconditioned. Well, it's just like ridiculous. A lot of the times we were wasting our time and they were wasting their time when something should have been and could have been a no in the first 10 seconds.
Yes.
And so we came up with 3 questions. The questions were, do you guys have meetings and conferences? Second, do you bring in speakers from the outside? Third, do you have a budget to pay your speakers? If the answers are no, we don't have to go on and continue on for the next 5 minutes with pleasantries. We've just saved everybody time. So we started inverting the process to say, can we get the real no's up front? Can we get the disqualification no's as early as possible? And that was a big change for us. In other cases, though, there's other things to work with.
Yes, and though that I believe that process specifically, and I'm a little bit biased to my industry because I've been in it for 30 years, and I'm sure the same thing with you guys. But I think if we don't have a series of qualification questions to start, we're truly wasting everyone's time.
Right.
I really, really believe that. And it's interesting because for the first time in my life, I never skimmed through the book before I read it. And then when I came to Andrea's 3 questions that you talk about, that she came up with, where it's one builds on the other, builds on the other, builds on the other. If there's an answer yet to yes to all 3, there's a mutual similarity. There's a congruence between the Go for No company and this company. And I think as a salesperson, this is probably one of the biggest keys when it comes to cold selling, right? I have a theory, and I've done it many times when we have customers and we ask things like, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What can we improve on? If all 3 of those are positive, that's a perfect time to ask for a reference letter, right? If one of those 3 are a negative, fix what's the negative, then ask the question again when they're all 3. Now you can ask for a reference letter or a reference or that kind of thing.
Sure.
But when it comes to, you're right, when it comes to cold calls, when it comes to that introduction, even if they just like you but don't trust you, because that's 2 different forms of business. If they like you, they might let you speak. When they trust you, they're going to bring you to every conference, or it's going to be a bigger contract, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
So I look at those and I say, there is a time for a yes, yes, yes. Then can I get this? And it's like, well, I've just said yes to these 3. Makes sense. But you're absolutely right. Getting yeses throughout a cold call because it's easier, and then asking, hey, are you ready to continue? And they say no. Here's my question. Out of the people that you've spoken to that have mentioned this to you, do you find they take the no harder?
Oh, you mean people who use disqualification as a methodology?
No, people who say, hey, would you like to make more money? Yes, absolutely. Would you like to? And then you ask the question, and it's like, no, not interested. And it's like, oh, but I thought we were having such a great conversation, right?
That's what I was about ready to bring up. And this is I guess you'd call it, I don't want to say it's an argument, but there is a debate in the selling world, which is building rapport, right? And some of our philosophy we learned very early on that kind of turned our head around, and we realized how synergistic it was with Go for No, is a methodology called high probability selling. And that's when he came to me one day and he was like, we're changing the way we sell. We're just going to call and we're just going to disqualify. And one of the things that they taught in high probability selling was that you built rapport on the back end once you started building a relationship to see if there was a fit. But it's like, people think that they need to build rapport way in advance, and that's why they start with the niceties, the pleasantries, and all the stuff. And it's like, no, don't waste my time with that. And so Dan, even in emails and things like that, and messaging, I will not open with a pleasantry. And all the like happy 2024, and I hope all the things are going well for you. It's like, no, I want to know, hey, did you get the package I sent? Hey, I'm checking back because we were going to schedule a call this month. And pleasantries are at the end, because you don't have to build rapport in the beginning. It to your point, respect your prospect and save them time.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, and especially in today's day and age, like in our industry, so we go after like logistics managers, traffic managers, VP of logistics, VP of procurement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what we are finding more and the more and more we speak to more of our prospects, especially through this show, because I have a lot of them on, listen, I'm getting 3 times as many calls from people. 99.9% of them are just wasting my time. I know attention is the most valuable thing. I know through being sick for the last 2 years that time is all I got, and I really don't want to waste it on anything at all. And for these people that we speak with since COVID have had 2 and 3 jobs put on their shoulders. So already you can imagine the immense pressure build up with them. And then I take into account, and I've often said to people, and I'd love your guys' thoughts on this, because I've been in sales my whole life. And when I get a call from somebody asking me about duct cleaning in the middle of my business day, I actually get mad. Well, I shouldn't say mad. I get frustrated. I'm like, oh, because I get pulled out of what I'm doing. And then it takes me like 5-6 minutes to get back in the groove. And I might have been in a really good groove, but you obviously don't want to just let your phone ring. And some people in our industry, no, they're not answering the phone unless they know the number. They're not answering it.
Oh, yeah.
So, from that perspective, and from us saying, you have so much more on your plate. How do I, in a sales call, respect your time? Because in sales, and I don't know about your guys' industry, I'd love to hear more about it, but I'm finding we're getting a hold of less people because they're not answering the phone, or they're not getting back to their, like, not interested, move on until it becomes a priority. And I remember speaking to a colleague one day, and they said, listen, it's kind of like this. If you're sitting in your living room and you go to get up and you trip and fall and you smack your head off the side of the coffee table, and all of a sudden your doorbell rings and you go to the door and you're holding, got blood coming down, and it's somebody selling Girl Guide cookies, you're probably not buying Girl Guide cookies, because at that point in time, you're not congruent with what you need. But if it's a doctor or a nurse standing at the door, you're like, yeah, you can come in, let's go, right? So it's like, do you guys find that entering into the prospect's mind as to where they're at is playing a big role in, from your audiences, from people that you speak to, is playing a bigger role than it used to?
Absolutely. I mean, well, first of all, what I've found in my industry is, and this, I think COVID was obviously it was a huge disruptor with everything.
Yeah.
Knowing where people are now is much of the battle, and getting people's numbers. And I get a little squeamish, I admit, of calling somebody's cell phone who I've never talked, calling a cell phone cold. If you can get that number, going through the company these days, like back in the day, we used to be able to call a company and everyone was there. It was like the dial by name directory, type in the letters of the person's last name, you would be sent to their office, easy peasy, you got in. And now it's like half the numbers don't even have a dial by name directory. People aren't even there at the office anymore. So yeah, you've got to try every which way to get in front of people. And I like having a little bit of a warm contact before I use somebody's, cell phone.
Yes.
I just can't.
Yeah, and Dan, a lot of our marketing, I will admit that probably the majority of it is not cold calling. The majority of it has been direct mail. You know, we send some type of flyer, package, brochure, a copy of our book. You know, hey, enclose a copy of our book. If you like the book, you'd enjoy, you know, having us come speak at your conference. You can't even get mail to people now. You can't get the mail to them. You can't get the address. You know, you send something to the corporate office. Well, the person doesn't work at the corporate office anymore.
Yes.
They're working from home. They're not just going to drop it in the mailbox in the, you know, in the mail room. And so that whole process has been wildly disrupted, and it's just much more difficult.
So if you don't mind me asking then, because I think this will really help everybody watching and listening, what is your process now of trying to get a hold of people? Like what are you guys doing that you didn't do before that you're finding works?
Yeah, so a lot more research, but the good news is there's a lot more tools. So, I mean, we utilize, back in the day, there was a system called Hoovers, which was kind of like I think it was like the Dun and Bradstreet type thing. And now, you know, you have tools like Rocket Reach, and gosh, what's the other one that?
Oh, there's Apollo, there's Uplead, there's Zoom Info, there's Seamless, there's
yeah, exactly. And so I kind of work on a multi-pronged approach. LinkedIn Sales Navigator, messaging them. So figure out if I can get the address. If I can find the address through Sales Navigator, I will send a cold package. And then I do most of the work on LinkedIn trying to set up a meeting. I mean, that is, you know, that's it. And if you can find some other social media that the person's on and follow them. But for B2B, it's LinkedIn. I mean, it's the place to be. And we don't mind spending, you know, I think a lot of it has to do with like the cost to acquire that customer. And if we have to spend $100 to acquire a customer for a, you know, 5-figure sale, then that's like easy. That's like totally worth spending that money. So, I mean, we'll send a, we call it a bomb box. It sounds really bad. We're not actually sending people bombs.
Just don't put that on the label when it goes in. That's all.
But it's a box with like, you open it up and it's just like the world of Go for No. We got stickers and pens and notepad and book and a letter. And so we kind of want to have we learned this from Dan Kennedy, who's was a marketing genius.
Excellent marketing genius, yes.
He was like, if you're going to send something to somebody, you know, overwhelm them with evidence. Overwhelm them with, don't just send like a book. I mean, we can send a book, which I will send just a book if somebody has said like, yeah, I'd like a copy of the book. But otherwise on these cold things, I want to like kind of blow people away and have them go like, holy cow, what is this? I need to learn more about this.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a great approach. Now let me ask you this when it comes to your LinkedIn outreach, because you have so many different people offering up so many different pieces of advice, right? When you're doing your LinkedIn outreach, are you actually including one of your or all of your qualification questions in the outreach?
Good question. No, I start with my favorite one, which is, are you having an event? Do you have a sales meeting planned?
Okay, so you do start with one qualification question because obviously, that,
but I mean, I only do the one. I only do the one question. Yeah. Yep. I focus on that. I have one kind of benefit statement, and then my next question is, I like either. Well, I ask if we can set up a meeting to discuss, and then I kind of take them off the hook and say, also happy to send you information as well. And more often than not, people who are interested will just want a little bit of information. But then they go on the special list, which is, okay, we've got a dialogue going. And guess what? Once I get that, I'm never giving up on you, ever.
So you got a little bit of the Bob Berg, give them a back door in there. And then you got I love that. I'm doing the same thing. So when I even connect, I'm asking my pre-qualification question in my connection. And I'm finding, and just, this is one person. So, and the reason I asked that is to kind of get into this a little bit more. And what I'm finding is the people that accept the connection are so much more willing to chat than if you would just send, like I've done it before where I've just sent a connection request because, you know, there's people out there. No, don't put any text. Just send a connection request.
Right.
But I put just enough so they can see what I'm looking for in the connection. I'm looking to connect because I'd like to know if.
Yeah.
This is the question, want to connect, ? And so if they connect, the way I'm finding it and kind of the philosophy, the thought structure that I went through to create that process is I said, if somebody messages me and says, hey, I've helped people, you know, generate $1 million+ GP in profit in under 12 months. Are you interested in hearing more? And that's the connection request. If I hit yes, I'm interested in hearing more.
Right.
If I don't hit yes, ignore. And it's fine. I just won't reply back to you because you're not in the field or in the bubble of my ICP.
Right.
And so I love the fact that you do that because you're now taking your qualifying questions. Now, are you doing it in a message or do you connect first, then do a message?
So yeah, it really depends. So there's all these different strategies depending on kind of what door I'm going into. So my favorite thing to do if I send a cold package is to follow up with a connection request and reference the package. And I love saying, and I got this from Sam McKenna, who's a big LinkedIn trainer. And she says, she has the line, my name might look familiar. So I always say, my name might look familiar. I'm the co-author of the best-selling book, Go For No. I sent you a package last month. Would love to connect. That's it. Because my whole thing is, what these people may or may not know is, we're going to bring Go For No into your company. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. Because we're going to get to know each other. I'm going to get to know you. I'm going to keep adding value. I'm going to keep sending you things. And until you disconnect from me or just tell me, no, we never hire speakers. So that's my starting point. Now, if it's just a cold message, I also do like just straight up cold messaging on Sales Navigator. And that's when I ask the disqualifying question to see if I can move through those. Because, you know, from a numbers standpoint, you can send obviously so many more just cold messages than you can packages. Yes. The packages are kind of like the ICP no-brainer, gonna send a package. This one might be I believe there's a fit, but I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if they hire speakers. I don't know if they have meetings. So let me try to determine if this is a good prospect or not.
Mm-hmm. And also when you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in reading between the lines, when you send a package, and I'm mentioning this just for all you logistics reps out there, is, and please, not your company profile, but if you can send a package with maybe some reference letters, some outside of the box stuff material, maybe a really good book like this that you can send to your prospects, would you not then agree, both you, Richard and Andrea, that if somebody receives your package, they know what you're messaging about? Because it's pretty simple, right? Like you guys are there to come into their office and speak, come to their next sales event and speak and increase the revenue in the company. That's very apparent through the books, through whatever book, through the movie, all of that. So now you don't really have to qualify, disqualify. It's more of a casual connection or a casual message, right? As opposed to that cold message. So for all of you out there that are thinking, well, I don't really have anything to send anyone, you really do. I think every company does, if you really think outside the box. And again, I'll say it again, just because it's like, I did this for the first 7 years of my career. I literally took a mailing list, like 600 people, and I wrote out 600 envelopes and I stuffed my brochure in it. And I'm sure that 99.9% of those bad boys went in the garbage before anyone even looked at them, right? Yeah. So it's just, so yeah, okay. And I know we're already 30 minutes in. Are you guys okay if I ask you a few from timing perspective? If we go through a few things from the book? Okay. Because I want to make sure that we really get to it. So first things first, for anyone that hasn't gone through this book, The reason I asked you guys about the formatting of it is because it's one of the best formats I've ever seen. You have your title, take responsibility. When they say no, take responsibility. And literally it's one page right to the point about what we need to do in order to change this. And then at the end, it's the key takeaway. And then the next one, it could be worse, is a page and a half with a key takeaway. So for me, if you're skimming this book, you can go right to the piece that really impacts or what's impacting you today and almost use it more as a guide than a front to cover read. Was that one of the thoughts you went through when you created it?
Yeah, well, that's what, when we were writing it, we were kind of trying to determine what the actual format would be. And we just kept coming up with, okay, this idea and this idea. And we were brainstorming all of the things that we had heard over the years of issues that people had. Like, some of it was actually kind of reverse engineering. So like, one issue we hear all the time is, how do I, if I'm really down, if I'm really depressed, I'm reeling, I got a bad no, or I'm getting a bunch of no's and I'm just out of sorts. So we reverse engineered that and we were like, okay, that is, you need to change your state. So that ended up being one of our topics, was physically change your state. So if you're getting a lot of no's or whatever, get up off of your desk, go take a walk, go listen to some great music. So we kind of reverse engineered those. And once we came up with all the topics and we realized how many we had, then we had the idea, okay, let's do a little summation takeaway for everybody. And then it really became obvious. It was like, and that's how we ended up with the subtitle. We were like, this is a guide. So I would love people to, instead of reading it cover to cover, is just every day that you are going to focus on sales, open it up and just flip to one of these. And it can just be a kind of a top of mind thing. So think about taking responsibility. Think about, one of the topics is listening. So be mindful that day about listening. One of my favorites too, Dan, and you brought this up when you were saying how personally you took no, and we have that as one of them as well. But also, don't be surprised when you get no. No is like, that's going to be the first answer out of most people's mouths. Is like,
yes.
That's no. Hey, do you need help with your logistics services? No, we absolutely have that covered. Don't worry about it. We have it covered. Do you really? Probably. There's probably issues. And it's just timing, or it's the person, it's a huge issue and it's so frustrating and daunting. They don't even want to deal with it right now.
Yes.
They don't want to think about it. And so that one, and this was Rich's that you came up with, it was, don't be surprised. And then the next one, the counter to that is, and do be surprised.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
and do be surprised. And that one, that's the one that I was thinking about for you, which is, now, wait a minute. I know I can solve your problem. I know I can do a good job for you. I am surprised.
Yeah. And one of ours was celebrate. And you never know where the impetus for an idea is going to come from. But years ago, we were in Mexico and at a resort, and they had a timeshare presentation. And so, you got the free gift or whatever it was. So we went and we saw that every time somebody signed up for the timeshare, the guy would go over and ring this bell, bing, 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 bing. And I'm thinking, oh, they're celebrating yes. And then I thought, what if people started celebrating no? What if every time you heard the word no, you celebrated? And when you heard the word yes, you just chill a little bit. Because what would happen is yes would stop being so powerful in your life and no would stop being so draining. What if you reverse your own reaction? What if you got the yes and you go, okay, let's make another call. And you got a no and you went like, all right. And I'll just tell you one very, very quick thing here. Years ago, I'm going back almost 20 years now, when we first started our business. We had a client we were chasing. It was a very, very lucrative deal. The phone rang. Andrea got the call and she says, I can hear her. She's like, Oh, okay, yeah, great. Well, thank you. Keep us in mind for next year, right? And she hung up the phone and our desks were like opposite each other. And we spun around in our chairs and we high-fived each other and went back to work. So celebrating the no's is how you change your attitude about hearing the word no. It's this toxic reaction. So that's just an example of where an idea came from for the book. is we just said, okay, we just kept making notes. It was on a napkin if we had to, just keep making notes and throwing them in a box. And then eventually we had enough stuff for the book.
That is awesome. Awesome. I love that. So I'm going to go through a few of these, and probably a little selfishly, because obviously I'm attracted to ones that are definitive to my brain. One of the most powerful, can I call it a chapter or idea? Idea. You may have overdone the passion. I think I read this 12 times, maybe even 15, because I'm like, how can I overdo the passion? And then I start thinking about how many eyes I've seen glaze over when I get really going. And I'm like, okay, I've obviously lost that person, that person, that person. And we'll be sitting at a boardroom table, executives. And I'm like, and I'm like the Tasmanian devil going round and round because I'm so passionate about what I do. And then you kind of look up and you've lost everyone. So above and beyond the book, how did this get put in? What was kind of the aha moments for you?
Yeah, that's one of your
because I see you guys just as passionate. I mean, you have to be passionate about what you do to write 2 books, to do a movie, to drive cross country filming people. And then I've edited movies before. It's not a short-term task. Like, it's long and everything has to flow. And there's so much thought that goes into energy. And so what brought this piece into the book?
Well, for me, I think it's how passion can so easily come off as desperation. A lot of times, see, I'm a more analytical type. There's some people who are just all, it's all bravado, it's all enthusiasm. I want to be sold to like a lawyer, making his case. I want you to give me proof. If A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. I want you to lay it out in logical terms. The people who are selling with passion, that are, like, this is the greatest product that's ever existed. Look what it'll do to your floors. And you feel like you're watching a TV commercial, and all I can do is be repelled by it and think, come on, enough already. Especially when that passion's in person and people are like, metaphorically, but actually leaning in with their passion, where they're like, right on you. All you can do is retreat. All you can do is lean back. I want to be drawn in. And so because I tend to think in a more analytical manner, and it's one of the things that people say about, when I speak on stage, you're like, you're not a barnstormer, are you? No, I am not a barnstormer, because I'm not here to, get you excited for an hour and then have you forget. I want to tell you stories and give you information that you can't forget. And that tends to almost always be something that's got less passion in it, right? More logic, less passion. So that's really where that came from.
I love that. I love that. And I love the fact, I mean, you mentioned it in a chapter as well, but I love the fact that, well, again, passion can be seen as desperation. I never once, until I read this chapter, this part of the book, where it really gets you thinking. It gets you thinking, did I sound desperate when I was trying to be passionate? Or did I sound desperate, whereas Russell Brunson says you have technobabble, right? We all have technobabble in our industry. And that's been something that I've been trying so hard to overcome, because I'm a tech geek. And I love, Richard, I'm like you, I love getting into the nitty gritty and how does this equation add up? And then I start coming up with adjectives for it and, and all these different things. And I find it's just, I blow way over people's heads, and it's nothing against them. It's just what it is. So I love that you had that. The next one that I want to talk to you guys about is it could be worse. And I think this being in the front of the book, the part of the book, I mean, we're only on page 25 here. So many salespeople think the worst thing a prospect can say is no. It's not. What is the worst is, let me think about it. Why? Because that 5-letter phrase poses these problems. And this is where I'm reading and I'm like, wow. And this is what, so it deludes us into believing we're making progress when we're actually not. I can't tell you how many times I've quoted out customers we've had come to, all right, perfect. You know what? It all works. Let me think about it. Okay, awesome. I hang up the phone and go, man, I got that one. That, like, next week we're gonna be doing business. That person,
Yeah.
and like 6 months later, it's like 0 dark 30. They're off chasing Osama bin Laden in the dark somewhere, and I can't find them. And I'm like, what the heck's what happened? Like, I'm thinking, is this person okay? Was there a death in the family? Whatever. And it was a way to just get me off the phone and be like, all right, now I got your number. I'm never answering. So for me, that was crazy. And then it is often a no in disguise. The prospect isn't really thinking about it. It's just their way of saying no without conflict. And I think as we get further and further down the rabbit hole, we realize less and less people want conflict in their life. And here's like where my brain goes. And I'd love for you guys to either put me in line or let's dive into the sandbox here a little bit more. Like, to me, conflict is not saying no. Conflict is, you have a product or service, doesn't match where I'm at. We're not congruent at this point in time. Thank you very much. Try me back in a few months. Maybe my goals, objectives, mandates, whatever you want to call it, have changed. Whereas other people think it's easier just to, oh, let me think about it. Oh, you know what? Okay, send me some rates, like in our industry, right?
Oh, yeah.
One of the biggest things to get people off the phone is, well, I ship from Dallas, Texas to Miami, Florida. It's truckload. I do about once a week. Get me a rate and we'll talk.
Mm-hmm.
And again, 0 dark 30. They
Yeah.
disappear. It's like they just vanish. They're Aladdin and the genie took them away. And to me, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, okay, I just spent time working on this. I'm following up with you. You're not getting back to me. Why? Right. And then you go into number 3. Let me think about it. Makes it more challenging to discover the hidden objective, AKA the truth. And I think that's the banger of it all. Right. So when we're talking about this, I have a question here to ask you guys is, how do you overcome the let me think about it? And I'd like something different from what you put in the book, if you can, like a real life example, if you can.
Okay.
Right. Well, let me just say the first thing is that the model that we talk about in the front of the book, the different selling styles.
Yes.
And this is where, Richard and I are not, I think by our nature, we're more retriever-like. And by that, I mean, we tend to want to be the friend selling style. We're not order takers per se, but like most of the friend selling styles, we're aspiring to be the lion-like salesperson. The shark salesperson, when they hear, let me think about it, and this is where it's difficult to get yourself out of your friend-like comfort zone. Mm-hmm. So the friend in this instance is like, yes, I would want to think about it if it was me, right? It's that empathy. And so you're telling me you want to think about it, so I'm going to let you. Now, if you were coming from the shark perspective is, you want to think about it? Fantastic. Let's think about it together. Let's talk me through it. What are you thinking about? And that is where the conflict comes up, right? So you either have to have the courage to say, so yeah, what do you want to think about? What's your biggest concern? And this is why, and this is not in the book, to your point, and this is something that I have learned more recently.
I knew there was more gold that you guys weren't giving us.
More gold about go for no. And that is to go for no to the problem and not so much to the solution. So when we're going for no from a solution standpoint, it's like, let's try to sell the solution. But maybe if you could ask a couple questions and point out the issues to your customer. So I'm thinking about your example, Dan, is instead of just giving the rate and it's the Dallas to Miami and the person thinks they're solving for price, they think they're going to talk to you and you're going for no on price, which is the solution. But instead, what is the problem that you want to solve to help them go from Dallas to Miami? That's not necessarily rooted in that. And can you go for no to that problem so that you don't end up with the let me think about it? But I will tell you this in all honesty, the best thing that I have done, and we definitely get let me think about it. Our let me think about it. We really have no choice, and the reason is because we well, actually, we're not the only people with competitors, but usually they're honest with us, and it's not that they're thinking about us versus nothing. They're thinking about us against a bunch of other people.
Yeah.
And so we basically,
yeah, they are thinking about it. They
are legit thinking about it, and it's not a question of, hey, we may not have a sales meeting, we may not hire a speaker at all. We're looking at the collection, we're looking at we have a committee, and the best thing that we have learned to do is to just say, well, is there any question that maybe we haven't answered? Is there anything that you think might come up in your discussion? We're happy to answer that for you now. Usually there's not, and then we just let it go.
That's great. And I also think, I mean, do you guys also add in, or maybe ask the questions is a better way to phrase it, about, okay, so how does your committee make a decision? Right. So you start analyzing how their decision is made. And I've found when especially in logistics, when we do that, it's like, okay, well, how are you presently making those decisions to bring in a new service provider? Well, we're doing it based on this, this, and this. Okay. You know, I never actually covered this part of it in what we talked about. So here's this part of it. So you have, for lack of a better term, more ammunition when that person's making a decision, right? Are you guys using that philosophy as well when they're saying, let's think about it? Okay, what is that decision-making process?
Yeah, I mean, a bit, you know, I think one of the other big ones is we know that one of the questions we ask is, who have you hired in the past? You know, that gives us a good idea of kind of the goals that they're going after. And that's why I think that for us to differentiate ourselves, and this is the thing that we add into the let me think about it, is we kind of go for no again to the problem. So it's like, we just reiterate, if you want a speaker who will solve, your people are struggling with fear of rejection, they're coming up against a lot of no's, they've got this going on. If that's the problem that you want to solve, then we are the ideal speakers for you.
Yeah, and I think that's the big difference, Dan, is that, and I will admit that, I mean, you know, the type of sales that you are involved in is a longer sales cycle. It is more complex. There's a lot of working parts there. And you know, in our particular case, we have never been with a client and they said, well, we're thinking that, you know, we're looking for the $500,000 to bring Tony Robbins in, or we're thinking about hiring you. And we sit there and then we start making the case. Well, let's explain why we're better than Tony. And let's, you know, we just don't do any of that. Yeah. And so, you know,
you guys also solve completely different things.
Exactly. It's very different. And so in our particular case, as you said before, they get the book, Go for No. When they say no, they understand this is going to be about dealing with, you know, failure and rejection. And they know if they have the problem. They know that their people, you know, some of their people are not selling to their potential. We just don't have to do a lot of the stuff that other people would. We just have to put it in front of people. If we put it in front of enough people, then the ones who want it are going to say, hey, you know, I'd love to have you guys at the conference. And then the rest of them kind of drift away. So we're a little bit luckier in that regard. But totally. If we have any obstacle in our business, it's getting in front of the ideal customer more. It's just getting seen more. And that's just a prospecting issue. I mean, it is just pouring the people in the top of the funnel.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I also think about it in this manner, and I'd love your guys' thoughts on it. In today's age, anyone can position themselves. And if a prospect, I mean, I believe personally, every prospect I communicate with has either Googled me or been to my LinkedIn. I think for most people, especially LinkedIn being the platform it is today, this is your resume. And I think anyone out there can actually maybe not create the exact momentum this would give you, but instead of a box, when they go to LinkedIn and typed in your name, that could be the box of goodies that you're showing people about what you do. And what I mean by that is creating content saying, hey, this is who I serve. This is how I serve them. This is why I'm the best at what I do. Here's some customer testimonials, whatever the case may be. And we can do a whole little show on content, but that content then becomes what this represents to you on a much smaller scale, because a published book gives you way more credibility than a post. Do you know what I mean? I remember when I wrote my book as a business card.
Yeah.
Literally, that was the purpose of the book, is I wanted it to be my
Absolutely.
business card. Every person I went in to see, every time I sent something to somebody, my book would be in there. So they would look at it and say, okay, so if I have two people I'm looking at, this person wrote, this really good book, and this person's done nothing. I feel anyways, it kind of gave me that extra credibility that maybe the second person didn't have. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Oh, totally.
We have a couple of comments here just to dip into, if I can get rid of that thing on the side of my screen. Think outside the box, Elsa says. Great conversation. Elsa, thanks for being here. Scott, good morning, brother. So yeah, we've got, is there anything before we go? Because I know I'm way beyond my time with you guys, and I'm so sorry. I apologize. I think we could do 3 hours on this. It's so great. Anything that you guys want to add before we jump off the conversation?
Yeah. Well, this is not really maybe as much of a go for no thing or a when they say no thing. And by the way, you gave us an idea a little while ago. You said there's more gold or more treasure, and I thought when they still say no.
There you go.
Yes. So we'll think about that. So hang on for another 10 years. But
I still, even if it's 10 years, I want a little blurb credit on the back there, Richard.
Yeah. we years and years and years ago, we were challenged by a friend of ours, a sales trainer, to do what he called a Genesis tree. And I'd never heard of the Genesis tree. He said, make a list of all of your clients, everybody who you work with, who have paid you money, and then ask yourself for each one, where did they come from? And where did they? What was the resource that you found them at, or was it a referral from somebody, right? Or did they come from a direct mail piece that you did, or whatever? And then if it's from another person, it's like, well, then where did that person come from, and where did that person come from? And I will just tell you, the reality is, and not all businesses can operate this way. I understand it, but the majority of our business, especially in our early years, came from meeting people in person at conferences. We would either go to the conference and walk the room and introduce ourselves in the years when we were poor, didn't have the money to actually buy a booth, or from renting a trade show booth. And it would be people who we met who when they saw the booth, they were walking a show looking for solutions to their problems. And there we were. And so I think a key thing is just the idea, can you put yourself in the place where people look for a solution to their problems? When they go looking for a solution to their problems, can you be somebody who's there? And when you think about, like running an ad in a magazine, you can run a full page ad in a magazine. Well, if they're not looking for anything, they're just going to flip past it, right? And so if they're not looking for a solution, that's why the internet's so wonderful. Ideally, you get the #1 source, you're on the #1 page in Google. And when they say overcoming fear of failure, rejection, you pop up. You're there when they come looking for you. And so, like I said, it's not exactly go for no, but it's an aha that we had along the way. And so now, because we have such a hard time getting in front of prospects, even getting them on the phone, even getting them to open our mail, we're now going to start going to conferences again. And we hadn't done conferences for years, but this spring we're going to be in New Orleans at the American ATD conference, training, for trainers, and we're going to be there again when they're looking for solutions. If that helps anybody who's listening to this, it's really it is the ideal way to go.
Interesting. Scott's got a question here. He said, do you recommend the go for no for network marketing or the OG first?
Scott, what do you say? What do you
Oh, do you want me first?
Yeah.
Well, we recommend go for no first, only because it is is, as you already said, Dan, it's the mind-opening aha story that will give you the emotional reaction to it. But if you're in network marketing, then the network marketing is going to give you some insights into application of Go for No in a, you know, in a more detailed way.
So roundabout sort of way of saying, obviously you
Buy
need
them
to
both.
both. Buy them both.
Not what I was
We're
after.
going for no here, Scott, but yes.
So, and obviously, now do you guys still have the video on the market?
So that, we have the movie, and sadly the movie video has so degraded because it was so long ago that we filmed it. So if we had done that movie with today's technology, it would probably still look halfway decent, but that was in 2010 and we did flip cameras. You can still rent it on Cinevi, the movie. I have to warn people, it's like the quality now is just, it's not good, sadly.
It's like watching an Orson Welles movie.
Yeah, you're watching it's like watching something from the 70s.
Yeah, you know what though, I have to say, it's real. It's what I call it, and Frank Kern turned me on to this philosophy. It's a ghetto movie, and I don't mean that in any ill way.
No.
It's a matter of it's real, and to me, and I'll tell you guys, when I first watched it, I think it was probably 2009 when I first watched it, maybe. Yeah. Probably somewhere around there, maybe 2010. And I remember it was real. Like it feels more real than like a documentary because it doesn't have the fancy editing. It's like, I remember Bob Berg. I think you guys were in his kitchen.
Yeah.
Just talking like you're sitting down with some of these amazing people, like just sitting in their living room. It's not a setup studio. It doesn't have all that blue black light backlighting that you see these days. It's real. And to me, that was way better than any produced film could have given you from a content perspective. And again, there's the visual, then there's the content. And what are you looking at? Are you looking at the visuals, people, or are you looking at the content? Go for the content every time. Who cares how it's filmed? But if you can't, definitely grab a hold of that. And then obviously, would you guys prefer Amazon to shout out for these or go to your website?
Amazon. Easy.
Amazon. Make sure you leave a damn review, all. Do you guys have anything else that I missed in today? I mean, I know I missed a million things, but anything else off the top of your heads before we get moving on?
Dan, we just always have so much fun. Our conversations are so much fun, and I just want to apologize for the viewers because we do tend to jump all around. That is how, when Dan and I have conversations off camera, we're so frenetic. We're jumping from topic to topic and we talk forever. So thank you for hanging in with us. And I just want to say, the bottom line is that I think what I see with people that struggle with Go for No and dealing with when they do say no and all of this, you just got to get into action. You've got to, Scott, that's a great idea. It's do Audible. Yeah. You just got to get into
He said,
action.
I'll just get both.
Yeah. And the more action that you get into, the more the fear, the hesitation, the more you learn. I mean, that's what I love about sales is I love the challenge. I just love the challenge of, okay, this message is working. This is getting people interested. How can I do this? How can I stay persistent? What can I reach out? What can I offer of value next to stay on this person's radar? And so but that just requires that you get into action.
Yeah, and I'll just say, because you complimented us on the movie, there's so much that we never get to tell anybody. For that movie, Jack Canfield turned us down 5 times before he finally said yes. Randy Gage turned us down 7 times before he finally said yes. And the 7th time he turned us down was on the morning of the shoot. At the last minute, he goes, I decided I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And we're like,
that's not like Randy at all.
I'm chasing him down the thing at the National Speakers Association, and he's like, you don't want me in your movie. And I'm like, he goes, I don't really agree with your philosophy. I'm like, that's exactly why you need to be in our movie. Come on.
Right. And so anybody who thinks that, that success is easy anywhere, it just isn't, you got to work for it. And in the end, you know, you can be pretty proud of the fact that you did work for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you guys addressed that right at the beginning of the movie when you're in the car with the camcorder, like filming the road trip. And it's like, guys, this is not just, you know, like if you look at The Secret or any of these movies, like it isn't everybody's in one place at one time, fly everybody in, have the same background, all, you know what I mean? This is the real deal, you know, grinding the Marines, digging the ditches on the front lines for your mission, for what you believe in, to bring stuff like this. And I just realized I actually pulled out this whole time I've been holding the movie in my hand. This is your training program.
Oh,
I don't know if you guys realize it, but I just realized it when you said, "Oh yeah, Dan, the movie." And I'm looking, I'm like, "Oh crap, yeah." I actually pulled out the training program, not the movie. But I think when you're on your mission to create something like this for the world, to better the world, I think if you don't hit obstacles, you're doing something wrong. Personally, yeah.
True.
So I love that. Thank you so much for, oh, it just told me Instagram shut us off now. We've been on too long. Sorry, Insta. Thank you so much, guys. Love it. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time. For everybody watching and listening, make sure you head over to Audible or Amazon. Pick up Go for No. The yes is a destination. No is how you get there. And then pick up When They Say No. Two amazing books. You can always reach out to both Andrea or Richard on LinkedIn. Andrea's on the show quite often. Hopefully Richard will start jumping on when Andrea comes on now. And for all of you watching and listening, go out there and make every call educational. And you, my friends, crush your sales.